Hey, Brixel! It's that time again. Gather round, folks, because Blizzard are letting the World of Warcraft devs out to show us what they've been working on, all the while the rest of the company have been floundering to save face. I admit, this expansion announcement was a bit of a bummer. Remember when these things happened at BlizzCon? WoW players would congregate to hear news about their favorite game, all dressed up and giddy with excitement. But yeah, BlizzCon has gone the way of the dodo, and for the most part, the player base is ducked out too. But even if we ignore the Blizzard lawsuits, which is admittedly rather difficult to do, the actual design decisions the WoW team have made over the last couple expansions probably would have made the mass player exodus happen anyway. And the funny thing is that for years we speculated about what the inevitable WoW killer would be, but never once did we consider that it would simply be a case of straight up corporate suicide. So in this video, I want to talk about the announcement of World of Warcraft's upcoming expansion, Dragonflight. I'm going to go over what I like, what I dislike, and ultimately try to answer the question, can Dragonflight save World of Warcraft? But before we do that, ding the thing if you haven't already, we release new MMO content every dang week, as well as regular streams over on twitch.tv/brixelgaming. Big love to our patrons, and with that, let's get to it. So in contrast to my struggles finding things to talk about in regards to ESO's upcoming release, High Isle, Dragonflight is the polar opposite. There is so much to talk about that I really can't get into all of it here, but if you guys do want us to get into more detail about some of these topics, or simply want us to make more WoW content, let us know. Now, as for the Dragonflight announcement, the stream covered a ton of new or returning features, but what I want to talk about first is the removal of a feature that's been a staple in WoW for years now, Borrowed Power. From Azerite power to legendary weapons, Blizzard tried it, and we, for the most part, hated it. So finally, after what feels like way too many failed iterations of the system, Borrowed Power appears to be getting the boot. Expanding your class's toolkit to the point that they become a core part of your character, only to lose it at the beginning of the next expansion, sucks. And that's not to mention the catch-up mechanics that went along with it, which would often end up punishing players who put in the most time. So I, for one, celebrate Blizzard getting rid of what has always been, frankly, a horrible feature. So, not a bad start. Okay, so what else do we got? Well, the reintroduction of a system that I feel has been sorely missing for years, and at the same time, a system that does a fantastic job plugging the hole Borrowed Power will leave in the game. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Motherfucking talent trees. Dear God, I've wanted traditional talent trees back in the game since about 3 seconds after trying the revamped system. And that desire to have old school trees back in the game was only compounded by how rewarding it feels in Classic. The reintroduction of the system will allow for far more hybridity in endgame playstyles while simultaneously rewarding players for every level they gain during the early game grind. If you ask me, that's a win-win. Plus, they can use these trees to transplant some of the cooler abilities from Borrowed Power back into the game. So it's a win-win-win. But let's not get carried away. I'll admit, I was a bit of a mouth-breathing WoW simp back in high school, so before I regress back to that state, let's check out some things I don't like. The biggest thing that really didn't gel with me in this announcement was, well, two things in one, I guess. The new race/class Drakthir Evoker. Obviously, I have no opinions about the class itself since I haven't played it, but I really dislike the idea of class locking in RPGs. Forcing one race only to be one class and vice versa stifles player expression. Maybe that Drakthir wants to be a warrior, and I personally think that would be kinda sick. I get that the class fantasy of the Evoker is tied tightly to the lore of dragons, so I understand why other races can't be Evokers, but this raises the question, why couldn't they just make a class that all, or at least some, of the other races can play? And yeah, I hear some of you saying, but Brixel. The Demon Hunters are, in a way, class-locked to their own versions of Blood and Night Elves, which, yeah, I agree with, but I can still play a Night Elf Druid, granted without the wings, tattoos, and general Hot Topic vibes. So the Drakthir Evoker for me gets a Anyway, I'm obviously hoping the Evoker is gonna be awesome, and I really like the idea of charged abilities, where the longer you hold down the button, the stronger the spell gets. I don't know whether or not the charged abilities will be seen in other classes, but I imagine the concept would work really well with healing specs like Disco Priest and Resto Druid, for example. Though I do hope the charged tiers are a bit more interesting than just more damage or a wider AoE. Now, something that I've seen a lot of people glossing over in their coverage of Dragonflight is the UI updates. Personally, this is one of the things I'm most excited about, though admittedly that might just be me. I spent an ungodly amount of time fiddling with add-ons and tweaking various HUDs over my many years playing WoW, and I think most players will agree that without add-ons, WoW's UI definitely falls behind its competitors. I mean, it says a lot when Star Wars The Old Republic is doing something better than you. I do wonder, however, just how comprehensive these tools will be. Will it be a light action bar modder like we see in most MMOs? Will there be something as comprehensive as heal bot integration? I guess we'll see. But okay, it's time to address the controversy. Not that one. I mean, the one that got the Guild Wars 2 community up in arms. Blizzard honestly seemed to hate their own flight system, but this time around, rather than resisting the player base and making us grind out another Pathfinder achievement, they've added an entirely new movement system, essentially combining Guild Wars 2's Skyscale and Griffin mounts. And yes, the levels of "can I copy your homework" here are so blatant it's comical, but I think I agree with Asmongold when he said,
"This gives me more faith in Blizzard than anything else in the cinematic, because they're back to their roots. They're back to doing what they do best. Stealing other people's ideas and doing them just a little bit better."
It's tough to say whether these dragon mounts are going to be better than the mounts in Guild Wars 2, and personally I kinda doubt it, but regardless, it's exciting to see them at least try to learn from their contemporaries, rather than continuing to believe that WoW is untouchable. So overall, I understand the community skepticism, and you may or may not agree with me, but this is the first time I've actually been hopeful for a WoW expansion since BFA, and we all know how that went down. I think rolling back to a more traditional WoW gameplay loop is exactly what's needed. Let's face it, when developing games this vast and complicated, sometimes you need to make a U-turn, take a few steps back, and course correct, so the game can ultimately end up where we all know it deserves to be. Now, obviously, I only touched on some of the things that interested me in the announcement here, so if you want more WoW content like this, let me know. Ultimately, will Dragonflight bring me back to WoW? I don't know, maybe, hopefully, but there are also factors beyond the scope of the game itself that I think players have to consider. But that's a topic for another day, so I'll pass the mic off to you guys. What do you think of Dragonflight? Concerned? Excited? Just done with Blizzard at this point? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below and we can talk about it. Sub if you haven't already, we have new MMO content coming out every week, as well as regular streams over on twitch.tv/brixelgaming. And if you really like our content, maybe consider becoming a patron. A big shout out to our patrons, and a special shout out to our Guardian tier patrons, Anthony Hodgson, Liam Pullis, and Luke Batoris. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Brixel, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.